Austin Chambers was 41 years old and earning $62,000 a year as a senior software developer at Datalink Systems when his wife Veronica filed for divorce exactly 17 hours after she believed he'd received a $100 million settlement from a class action lawsuit. What Veronica didn't know would cost her everything she'd calculated for the past 11 months. Austin sat in the parking lot of Henderson and Associates law firm in downtown Seattle, Washington, holding the divorce papers that had been served to him at 7:30 that morning. The rain hammered against his windshield, turning the city into a blur of gray and glass. His hands shook as he read Veronica's demands. $50 million, exactly half of what she thought he had. The irony was suffocating. 11 months ago, Austin had been part of a massive class action lawsuit against NextCore Technologies, his former employer who'd been caught stealing employee retirement contributions for over a decade. The lawsuit had made national news. 217 employees affected. Settlement total was $1.4 billion. The headlines screamed about justice, about workers finally getting what they were owed, about the largest employment fraud case in Washington state history. Veronica had seen those headlines. She'd done the math. She'd made her plans. What she hadn't done was ask Austin a single question about the actual settlement. She just assumed, calculated and filed for divorce the moment she thought the money had cleared his account. Austin looked at his phone. 3 missed calls from Veronica, 4 text messages. "We need to talk about the settlement. I know you got the money yesterday. My lawyer says we should handle this quickly and cleanly. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." He'd been married to Veronica for 9 years. She was 38 years old, worked part-time as a boutique manager at Evergreen Fashion in Bellevue, making approximately $31,000 annually for 25 hours a week. They'd met at a tech industry mixer in 2015. Austin had been a junior developer then, making $41,000 a year and driving a 15-year-old Toyota Camry with 173,000 miles on it. Veronica had been working retail full-time, struggling with student loans from a degree in fashion merchandising she'd never really used for a career. Their early years had been good. They'd lived in a small apartment in Capitol Hill, splitting rent and groceries, cooking dinner together, watching movies on their secondhand couch. They'd taken road trips to Portland and Vancouver, stayed in budget motels, laughed about being broke but happy. Veronica had said she loved Austin's stability, his quiet competence, his lack of ego. But something had shifted about 3 years into their marriage. Austin's career had started progressing. He'd moved to a senior developer role. His salary had climbed from $41,000 to $53,000 to $62,000. They'd bought a modest 3-bedroom house in Shoreline for $397,000 with a Veterans Affairs loan. Austin's father had served in Vietnam, making Austin eligible for the benefit. As Austin's income increased, Veronica's hours had decreased. She'd gone from full-time to 30 hours a week, then 25. She'd started spending more time at yoga classes, boutique fitness studios, brunch with her friends from the country club she'd joined. Austin hadn't minded supporting them. He'd thought that's what marriage meant: partnership, sharing resources, building a life together. Then came the NextCore lawsuit. Austin had worked at NextCore from 2011 to 2018 as a back-end systems developer. It was during those 7 years that the company's CFO, Lawrence Webb, had been systematically diverting employee retirement contributions into offshore accounts. The fraud had been sophisticated. Employee pay stubs showed the retirement contributions being deducted. Annual statements showed balances growing. But the actual money was disappearing, funneled through shell corporations registered in the Cayman Islands. The scheme collapsed in December 2023 when a junior accountant noticed discrepancies during a routine audit. The SEC investigation moved fast. By March of 2024, criminal charges had been filed. By June, a class action lawsuit had been organized, representing 217 affected employees. The case settled in September 2024, $1.4 billion. The headlines were massive. Local news ran stories about the betrayed workers finally getting justice. The Seattle Times published profiles of some of the plaintiffs. Austin had been quoted briefly, saying he was relieved the ordeal was over and looking forward to rebuilding his retirement. Veronica had become obsessed. Austin had noticed the change immediately after the settlement was announced. She'd started asking questions about the timeline. When would the money be distributed? How would it be paid? Would there be tax implications? She'd researched asset protection strategies, asked about setting up trusts, suggested they meet with a financial advisor. Before we continue with Austin's devastating discovery, if you value honesty and loyalty in relationships, then you owe it to yourself to subscribe to Story Mode Folktales right now. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because stories like these show us what really matters in life. And I'm genuinely curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love seeing our global community. Now let's see what Veronica doesn't know. Austin had tried to have an honest conversation with her about expectations. One evening in late October, while they were having dinner at their kitchen table, Austin had said, "Veronica, I need to make sure you understand something about this settlement." She'd looked up from her salmon, her eyes bright with interest. "What's that?" "The amount each person receives varies significantly based on how long they worked at NextCore and how much was stolen from their specific account. It's not an equal split." "I know, babe, but you worked there for 7 years. That's longer than most of the plaintiffs. Your settlement should be substantial." "Define substantial." Veronica had paused, doing mental math. "Well, 1.4 billion divided by 217 people. That's like 6 million per person on average. But you were there longer than average, so maybe 7 or 8 million? Even with taxes, you'd clear at least 4 or 5 million. Austin had stared at her. "That's what you think I'm getting? Isn't it?" Her voice had gone sharp. "Austin, don't tell me you took some lowball offer. Did you even negotiate?" "It's not a negotiation, Veronica. The settlement distribution was determined by a formula approved by the court. It's based on documented losses." "How much are you getting?" Austin had looked at his wife, this woman he'd shared 9 years of his life with, and realized he was looking at a stranger. "The final amount hasn't been confirmed yet, but I'll tell you when it's official." "You'll tell me?" Veronica had stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "Austin, I'm your wife. This affects both of us. I have a right to know. And I'll tell you when everything is finalized." She'd left the table, gone upstairs, and spent 2 hours on the phone with her friend Jessica. Austin had heard fragments of the conversation through the bedroom door. "He's being secretive, hiding the amount, probably planning something. I need to protect myself." That conversation had been 3 weeks ago. Then yesterday, November 14th, 2024, the settlement checks had been distributed. The law firm handling the class action, Brennan and Morrison, had sent official notification letters to all plaintiffs. Austin's letter had arrived by FedEx at 4:17 in the afternoon. He'd opened it in his home office while Veronica was at her yoga class. The letter detailed everything. The calculation of his specific losses over 7 years of employment at NextCore, the court-approved distribution formula, the legal fees deducted, the final net amount. Austin had read the number 3 times, his stomach sinking. Veronica had come home at 6:30, flushed from hot yoga, carrying a green smoothie that cost $9 from the organic cafe next to her studio. She'd seen the FedEx envelope on Austin's desk. "Is that it? Is that the settlement letter?" Austin had nodded. "And? We should talk about it this weekend. I need to process everything first." Veronica's face had transformed. The bright, eager expression had turned cold. "You need to process it? Austin, this is our money, our future. You don't get to process it alone. It's my settlement, Veronica, from my stolen retirement. We're married. What's yours is mine. That's how this works." Austin had looked at his wife of 9 years and seen something he'd been avoiding for months. Greed. Calculation. A woman who'd spent 11 months researching how to maximize her share of money she'd never earned, never lost, never suffered for. "I'll tell you this weekend," he'd repeated quietly. Veronica had grabbed her purse, her smoothie, and left the house. She'd returned at 11 that night, smelling like wine and expensive perfume. She'd slept in the guest room. The next morning at 7:30, a process server had knocked on Austin's door. Austin had signed for the papers, knowing before he even opened the envelope what they would say. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Veronica Ann Chambers versus Austin Michael Chambers. The petition was remarkably specific. Veronica was requesting an immediate 50-50 division of all marital assets, with particular emphasis on the settlement funds received by respondent on or about November 14, 2024, from the NextCore Technologies class action lawsuit, estimated at approximately $100 million. $100 million, Austin had almost laughed. The sound had died in his throat. Now sitting in his car outside the law office where he'd come to meet with his own attorney, Austin pulled out his phone and opened his photos. He'd taken a picture of the settlement letter, the document that contained the truth Veronica had been too greedy to wait for. The settlement amount, after legal fees and taxes, had been deposited into his account yesterday. The total was $43,712. Not $43 million, $43,000. Austin had worked at NextCore for 7 years, from ages 25 to 32. During those years, the company had matched his retirement contributions at 4% of his salary. His salary during those years had averaged $38,000 annually. The total stolen from his account over 7 years was approximately $10,600. The court-approved settlement formula had calculated interest, damages, and emotional distress. With the multiplier for theft and fraud, Austin's portion of the $1.4 billion settlement came to $67,000 before legal fees. After the attorneys took their percentage and taxes were deducted, he'd netted $43,712. It was a meaningful amount. Enough to rebuild part of what had been stolen, enough to add to his current retirement account, enough to feel like some justice had been served. But it wasn't life-changing money. It wasn't quit-your-job money. It wasn't $50 million. And Veronica had filed for divorce, demanding exactly half of $100 million she'd never bothered to verify actually existed. Austin's attorney, Michael Rodriguez, was a 46-year-old divorce specialist who'd been recommended by Austin's colleague at work. Michael had handled his sister's divorce 2 years ago, navigating a complicated separation involving a small business and investment properties. He charged $275 per hour, which would drain Austin's emergency fund, but he'd come highly recommended for being strategic and thorough. Austin walked into Michael's office at 9:15, the divorce petition in his hands. Michael took one look at Austin's face and gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Show me what you've got." Austin handed him the papers. Michael read through them, his expression neutral but his eyebrows rising slightly when he reached the part about the $100 million settlement. He looked up at Austin. "Is this amount accurate?" "The settlement exists. Her number is wildly inaccurate." "How inaccurate?" Austin pulled out his phone and showed Michael the photo of the settlement letter. Michael studied it carefully, then leaned back in his chair and whistled low. "She's off by $99.96 million. Approximately. Did you tell her the actual amount?" "I told her we'd discuss it this weekend." "She filed before I could." Michael's expression shifted to something between pity and professional interest. "Austin, I need to understand the timeline here. When did your wife become aware of the settlement?" "The settlement was announced publicly in September. The amount, $1.4 billion, was in all the local news." "And when did her behavior change?" Austin thought back. "Immediately. Within days of the announcement, she started researching asset protection, asking about trusts, suggesting we needed financial planning." "Did she ask you directly about your portion?" "Once, about 3 weeks ago. I told her the final amount hadn't been confirmed and that we'd discuss it when everything was official." "How did she react?" "She accused me of being secretive, said I was planning something. She spent the next few weeks on the phone with her friends, talking about protecting herself." Michael made notes on his legal pad. "And yesterday, November 14th, you received the official settlement notification?" 4:17 in the afternoon. Veronica was at yoga. I read the letter in my office. She came home around 6:30, saw the FedEx envelope, and demanded to know the amount. I said we'd discuss it this weekend. What happened then? She got angry, said this was our money, our future, said I didn't get to process it alone. Then she left, came back late smelling like wine, and slept in the guest room. This morning at 7:30, I was served divorce papers. Michael studied Austin carefully. She filed without knowing the actual amount. Correct. She assumed, based on media reports and her own calculations, that you received approximately $100 million. That appears to be her assumption. And she's demanding $50 million. Yes. Michael set down his pen. Austin, I need to ask you something important. During your marriage, did you and Veronica maintain joint finances or separate accounts? Joint checking account for household expenses. I kept my retirement accounts separate because they were established before we married. The settlement money was deposited into my individual account because it's technically a restoration of my pre-marriage retirement funds. Did Veronica contribute to household expenses? She brought in about $31,000 annually from part-time work. I earned $62,000. We split the mortgage, utilities, and groceries proportionally based on income. I paid roughly 67%. She paid 33%. And the house? Purchased 6 years ago for $397,000. We put down $20,000, which came entirely from my savings because I was eligible for a Veterans Affairs loan through my father's service. Current market value is approximately $540,000. We owe $293,000 on the mortgage. Michael calculated quickly. So roughly $247,000 in equity if you sold today. Approximately. And Veronica is demanding that equity plus $50 million from a settlement that actually totaled $43,000. Yes. Has she contacted you since you were served? Austin showed Michael his phone. 7 missed calls. 11 text messages. Michael read them carefully. If you're watching this and you believe in karma and consequences, you need to hit that subscribe button for StoryMode Folktales right now. Our channel brings you stories about real situations, real choices, and real outcomes. These stories matter because they teach us about human nature. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. These messages show clear expectation of significant money, Michael said. She's treating this like a business transaction. She wants to meet, discuss terms, handle things quickly. There's no emotion here, no acknowledgement of the marriage ending, just logistics about money she thinks exists. What do we do? Austin asked. Michael leaned forward. We respond to her petition with the truth. We file a response that includes documentation of the actual settlement amount. We provide the court with your settlement letter, your bank statements showing the deposit, and evidence that Veronica filed for divorce based on a wildly inaccurate assumption about your assets. Will that affect the divorce? Austin, in Washington state, we have community property laws. Generally, assets acquired during marriage are split 50-50. However, there are exceptions. Money awarded as compensation for losses incurred before marriage or restoration of assets that were taken from you individually can be argued as separate property. The retirement account was mine before we married. Exactly. The settlement is restoring something that was stolen from you personally, not from the marriage. We can argue that this should remain your separate property. What about Veronica's demand for $50 million? Michael smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant smile. That's where this gets interesting. Your wife filed a petition making specific demands based on specific asset claims. She stated under oath that you received approximately $100 million. That statement is factually false. She made legal demands based on assets that don't exist. What does that mean? It means we have grounds to request that she cover your legal fees for this frivolous petition. It means we can demonstrate that she filed for divorce not because the marriage was irretrievably broken, but because she believed you'd come into significant money. It means we can show a pattern of financial motivation rather than legitimate marital breakdown. Austin felt something loosening in his chest. She did this to herself. She absolutely did. Austin, I need to ask you directly. Do you want to save this marriage? The question hung in the air. Austin thought about 9 years with Veronica. The early years when they'd been partners. The gradual shift to her working less, spending more, asking for constant upgrades to their lifestyle. The past 11 months of her obsession with the settlement. The way she'd looked at him, not as her husband, but as a financial asset to be secured. No, Austin said quietly. I don't think there's anything left to save. Then we proceed with the divorce, but we do it on your terms, not hers. We document everything. We show the court exactly what she did. And we ensure you don't get punished for her greed. Austin nodded. What happens next? I file our response today. We include all documentation of the actual settlement amount. We request a hearing to address her false statements in the petition. We propose a fair division of actual marital assets. The house equity, split 50-50, would give her roughly $123,000. We offer that, plus you cover the legal fees you've already incurred. Clean break. No alimony because the marriage lasted less than 10 years, and she's capable of working full-time. She'll refuse. Of course she will, because she still thinks you have $100 million. But once the judge sees the documentation, once she realizes the money doesn't exist, she'll have to accept reality. When will she find out the truth? As soon as we file our response. It'll be delivered to her attorney, probably by end of business today. I'd estimate she'll know by 5 o'clock this afternoon. Austin left Michael's office at 11:30 with a plan. He drove home, packed a bag, and checked into an extended stay hotel near his office. He didn't want to be at the house when Veronica learned the truth. Michael had called him at 4:47 that afternoon. Our response was delivered to Veronica's attorney at 3:30. I just got off the phone with him. He's not happy. What did he say? He asked if we were sure about the settlement amount. I sent him copies of your settlement letter, your bank statement showing the deposit, and the court documents showing the distribution formula. He said he needed to consult with his client. Did he believe you? Eventually, but Austin, he also said Veronica is insisting the money is hidden, that you must have received more and are hiding it in offshore accounts or under a different name. Austin laughed, but it was bitter. I'm a software developer making $62,000 a year. I don't have offshore accounts. I told him that. I also told him we'd be happy to provide complete financial disclosure for the past 3 years, showing every deposit, every transaction. I said we had nothing to hide. What did he say? He said he'd call me back after talking to his client. Veronica's attorney called Michael back at 6:12. Michael had Austin on speakerphone. Mr. Rodriguez, my client is refusing to accept the settlement amount you've provided. She believes your client is attempting fraud and is hiding the actual funds. Michael's voice was professional but firm. Your client filed a petition claiming my client received approximately $100 million. That claim is false. We've provided documentation from the court-approved settlement showing the actual amount was $43,712. If your client wishes to challenge this, she's welcome to subpoena the law firm that handled the class action settlement, the court records, and the financial institutions involved. They will all confirm the same information. My client wants a forensic accountant to examine all of your client's financial records. We'll agree to that, provided your client pays for the forensic accountant. And Mr. Thompson, I should mention that we're considering filing a motion for sanctions based on your client's false statements in her petition. She made claims under oath about assets that don't exist, and that's a serious issue. There was a long pause. I need to discuss this with my client. Take your time, but understand that every day this drags on, your client is accumulating legal fees for a divorce based on money that was never there. The call had ended. Michael had looked at Austin with satisfaction. She's trapped. She filed based on greed and assumption. Now she either admits she was wrong and settles fairly, or she spends thousands of dollars on forensic accountants who will confirm what we've already told her. The forensic accountant's report came back 8 days later. Austin had paid for half as a gesture of good faith, though Michael had argued it was unnecessary. The report was 12 pages long and concluded that Austin James Chambers had received exactly $43,712 from the next core settlement. There were no hidden accounts, no offshore transfers, no fraudulent activity. Veronica's attorney called Michael at 2:30 on November 26th. My client wishes to accept the settlement terms you propose. House equity split 50-50, no alimony, each party covers their own legal fees going forward. That's acceptable, Michael said. We'll draw up the agreement. Mr. Rodriguez, my client also wanted me to ask, the $43,000 from the settlement, she believes she should receive half of that as well. Michael's laugh was sharp. Absolutely not. That money represents restoration of retirement funds stolen from my client before the marriage. It's separate property. If your client pushes on this, we'll litigate, and I promise you the court will agree with us. We have case law supporting this position. Understood. We'll proceed with the original terms. The divorce was finalized on January 9th, 2025. Austin and Veronica had signed the papers in separate rooms at the courthouse. They hadn't spoken directly in nearly 2 months. Austin kept the settlement money. He used $20,000 to pay off his legal fees and put the remaining $23,712 back into his retirement account, exactly where it should have been all along. He kept the house. Veronica took her half of the equity, $123,000, and moved to a condo in Bellevue. She'd stopped working entirely, claiming the divorce had been too emotionally traumatic. Austin heard through mutual friends that she was dating a senior executive at a medical device company, a man who drove a Mercedes and had season tickets to the Seattle Seahawks games. 3 months after the divorce, Austin ran into Veronica at a coffee shop in Fremont. She was with a woman Austin recognized as her friend Jessica, the one who'd been on all those phone calls during the divorce planning. Veronica saw him and her face went pale. She'd lost weight. Her hair was different, shorter and bleached lighter. She looked older somehow, harder. "Austin," she said, her voice tight. "Veronica." Jessica tugged at her arm. "Come on, let's go." But Veronica didn't move. "I want you to know I never meant for things to end the way they did." Austin studied his ex-wife. "Yes, you did. You planned the whole thing. You just planned it based on information you never bothered to verify. I thought you were hiding money. I thought you were going to leave me with nothing. I offered you half of everything we actually had. The house equity, fair division of assets. You wanted half of something that never existed?" Veronica's eyes filled with tears. "Do you know what people say about me now? My family, my friends. They all know I filed for divorce thinking you had $100 million. They know I looked like a greedy idiot." "You did look greedy," Austin said quietly, "because you were greedy. You didn't file because you were unhappy. You didn't file because I'd done something wrong. You filed the moment you thought I had money. That's not fair. We'd been having problems for years. Had we? Or were you just increasingly frustrated that I was still a regular guy with a regular job instead of the wealthy husband you decided you deserved?" Jessica pulled harder at Veronica's arm. "Come on, this isn't worth it." Veronica let herself be led away. At the door, she turned back. "I hope you're happy, Austin." "I'm getting there," he replied honestly. 6 months later, Austin was indeed getting there. He'd started therapy to process the betrayal and rebuild his sense of trust. He'd reconnected with old friends he'd neglected during the marriage. He'd started hiking again, something he'd loved before Veronica had complained that outdoor activities were boring and didn't photograph well for social media. He'd even started dating. Nothing serious yet, but he was open to the possibility. He'd learned something crucial through this experience. Money reveals character. It doesn't create it. Veronica's greed hadn't appeared when she thought he had $100 million. It had always been there, buried under the surface, waiting for an opportunity to emerge. The $43,712 sat in his retirement account, growing with compound interest. It wasn't a fortune, but it was his, earned through 7 years of work, stolen through corporate fraud, restored through justice, and protected from someone who'd valued it more than she'd valued him. Austin had learned that the most expensive lessons come from the people we trust most. Veronica had taught him to value authenticity over appearance, character over convenience, and genuine partnership over financial calculation. Those lessons were worth far more than $100 million. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a better life with better people who value you for who you are, not what you have. And sometimes the greatest gift you can receive is having someone reveal their true character before you waste any more years on them. Veronica had done him a favor. She'd filed for divorce at exactly the right moment, revealing herself completely before he'd invested another decade in a marriage built on sand. She'd shown him that he deserved better, wanted better, and could absolutely find better. And that was worth everything. If this story resonated with you, if it taught you something about greed, consequences, and the importance of character, then do me a favor. Subscribe to StoryMode Folktales right now. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and join our community of people who believe in justice, karma, and the power of truth. Stories like Austin's remind us that integrity matters, that patience pays off, and that greed always reveals itself eventually. The question is whether we're paying attention. Drop a comment and let me know what you think Austin's biggest mistake was and what you would have done differently. Thanks for watching, and remember, the people who truly value you will show up for you in both poverty and prosperity. Everyone else is just waiting for their cut. See you in the next story.